the Dr. Selwynn Howard Show. Today we're doing it a little differently. We're in studio at our office, which is AYSA Infusions. You all should come by, take a look at it. We actually have a couple of patients today. We offer a variety of choices from vitamins to iron to biologics. We treat migraines, we treat osteoporosis, we treat psoriasis. But nevertheless, we're here to introduce our latest guest, who is Dr. Vincent J Daniels. Dr. Daniels is a practicing dentist at Blue Diamond Dental in Wilmington, Delaware. And he has come down here all the way down for this visit with us today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Daniels.
Well, pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with my good friend Selwynn, Dr. Howard.
Yes, sir. And Vince and I have a long-standing history. We were both graduates of the class of 1987 at Morehouse College. Vince went on to do his dental work, and his dental school was at Temple University. We have a lot to talk about that because he had a couple of steps before he got to Temple. And he's been practicing in Delaware for the last, how many years? About 25 years or so?
24 years now.
24 years, okay. Vince, tell us why are you here in Atlanta? I know you came to be on the show, but that wasn't the real purpose that you're down here.
Of course it was to be on the show with you, so. We're down here for Founders Week and the Candle in the Dark, which is going to take place. This is the 35th Candle in the Dark for Morehouse College over the Hyatt this weekend. So come down to celebrate and to also hang out with some of other Morehouse brothers and sisters from Spring.
And that's the great thing about coming to a school like Morehouse College. You get a wide variety of people from all parts of the country. Vince was born in New York City.
That's correct.
And most of his growing up years was in Pittsburgh. Tell us a little bit about your growing up years.
Well, we moved up to Pittsburgh, I guess, when I was about 9 months old, actually, and we left in New Jersey, went from New York to New Jersey, but nonetheless, the Pittsburgh time frame was wonderful in terms of it was a good community. The life is, blue collar, a matter of making sure that you understood the value of work and the value of the process of, just having a dream, having a goal, and at the end of the day, from my perspective, I saw that the glass ceiling in Pittsburgh was kind of low, and once I got exposed to the Morehouse process, it really wasn't as much of a desire to return, but to spread wings and go elsewhere and do some things.
Well, tell us a little bit about your parents and Pittsburgh itself. It was a blue-collar town. It's similar to where I grew up in Birmingham, where we both say that they're both steel towns. Birmingham is known as the Pittsburgh of the South when I was growing up, a big steel town. So if Birmingham was the Pittsburgh of the South, where U.S. Steel was dominant and you had some other things that were dominant, what was going on in Pittsburgh?
U.S. Steel was dominant in Pittsburgh as well. That was the primary employer within the whole community and whole region. There was some steel mining, coal mining that had been going on, but it was a little further out in the suburban area. But for the most part, U.S. Steel was the driver, and then you had the onslaught of the melon in the melon banking community, as well as the PNC, which used to be Pittsburgh National, but now it's PNC. Those were the main employers. The other aspect was University of Pittsburgh, which tended to be a medical center that drove a lot of growth and a lot of the technology that we see today.
Tell us about your parents. What did they do in Pittsburgh?
Well, I grew up with my aunt and uncle. I was my mother's sister is the one who actually raised myself and 7 other children in the family. So I came into a very large family unit. My uncle was a pastor of a church, and he had a calling to Pittsburgh, and that's what moved the journey from New Jersey over to Pittsburgh. And he took the leadership at a church called 6 Mount Zion Baptist Church. And my aunt, who was the caregiver, raised the family, but she was the homemaker. So my uncle, who was part of the pastorship there, also became a trustee at the University of Pittsburgh and was one of the directors of the OIC, Opportunities Industrial Center, while he was also pastor of the church.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting because I tell Vince the story of my kids. We all went to school here. Well, they all went to school in Atlanta, and we were at a basketball game, and I struck up a conversation with a gentleman who seemed very centered and grounded. His kids were at the school as well, and come to find out, it was Vince's brother. So it was just so common how life brings itself together. That's why I really wanted to talk about you and your family, because he seemed very similar to you. I didn't know that was your brother,
Yeah.
but that was very interesting how that came about. So you grew up in Pittsburgh with your aunt and uncle, went to public school,
Public school K through 12.
and what did you do K through 12? Extracurricular sports? Would you play anything?
Extracurricular, I was active athletically, football, basketball, track, played in the All-Stars that made it to the City League as far as at that point. But from 8 until 18, that was my primary aspect, was both on the football field and also with tennis, by chance. I was a tennis player that played pretty well in high school, but nonetheless, all things outside of the actual sporting arena, we got exposed in Pittsburgh, the Explorers program and the kind of like an Achievers program where they took young men, young ladies to be exposed to some of the various occupations. And it's kind of like an upward bound scenario. There was various programs online. Having done some of those things allowed me to get exposed to the hospital setting, allowed me to see some of the things, and even work in a lab in the summer with Dr. Tom Starzl, who was one of the premier and first transplant surgeons that had been in the nation at the University of Pittsburgh. And so being a part of that had another means of putting a block in terms of the science aspect of a pursuit of a career. And that allowed me to, again, having had that as a foundational piece, getting to Morehouse and seeing and experiencing, all of what we were able to experience there amongst each other and amongst what was collectively there throughout the process.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I also got into the University of Pittsburgh, and it was a big transplant center at the time. I ended up not going, but very interesting how our lives somewhat parallel each other.
Exactly.
Now, we're going to get to the professional part, but let's get back to the sports thing. What was your position in football? What did you play?
Played safety and I played quarterback.
Quarterback.
Yeah.
Wow. Were you more?
I was a small guy, but a fast guy.
Were you running like the option? What was your?
We had an
what was
option.
your thing?
We ran
West
an
Coast offense.
It was the pre-West Coast offense.
Okay, all right.
It was more like the Oklahoma triple option, and we were trying to go
wishbone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
so
did
that's
come
kind
into
of
that.
what we ran back in the day. I played through 8th grade. I wasn't in high school. I ended up going to a place where I ended up doing more of my band work. But yeah, that's very interesting though. But I can see Vincent Daniels has always been a leader. I can see him being that quarterback. What kind of records did your team have?
We went to the city title game every year except my senior year. I think we won 2 out of the 3 that we went to. But my senior year was the only year that we didn't go.
Did not make it there.
And we didn't. We switched off of that position. I was actually purely a safety my senior year. I didn't play quarterback.
I get you.
But
Well, that's the reason you all didn't make it to the city game.
I would agree.
Very good. But back to your academic prowess. So you were exposed early on. What gave you that drive to say, look, I think I want to go into the healthcare profession? Why did you pick that as opposed to politics or law or anything else, education? What gave you your impetus to say, healthcare is where I'm headed?
Well, I would say, Selwynn, that one of the things that we were exposed to early on was that kind of program I was mentioning to you, the Explorers. And I had a cousin who was down in Texas who's a dentist in Austin. And I was able to spend a couple of summers through my high school area basically doing just observing work, kind of shadowing, and allowed me to initially start just observe what he was doing, how he was doing it, just to kind of have that thought process start to be developed as to seeing another African American man do what he does. Because other than that, we had no other members of our family that were in the healthcare field. I've always enjoyed working with my hands, always enjoyed the science of this helping to help people. And as a result, kind of tying those things together was as much of a role and impetus than anything else, I would say. But one of the things that the wisdom that I think I gained in that journey was my cousin, who's Wayne McElvin in Austin. He said, "Look," he said, "Vince, don't just lock into what you see me doing here. Understand that healthcare, medicine is much farther and wider spectrum here. So before you think that dentistry is what you want to do, explore the medical realm, explore the other things, and make sure that you, in your heart, that you can see yourself waking up every day with the same energy, the same excitement to do this. Because if you don't, it won't be fulfilling."
Definitely. So, Vince, you leave the city of Pittsburgh and you head down to Atlanta to attend Morehouse College. What gave you that track to come to Morehouse? And also, when you got here, what were some of the things that popped out to you that, hey, I picked the right spot here?
I would say, before I was talking with a Morehouse alum at University of Pittsburgh, I was deemed to go to Hampton University. My thought was Hampton, and I'd been exposed to Hampton over the years. Hadn't really been exposed to what Morehouse was all about until having had an opportunity to sit with one of the professors at Pitt, who said, "Look, dude, you don't want to, look at and not go down to the opportunity what Morehouse might provide." So I actually applied, and I had applied to Hampton, I applied to Morehouse, and got a scholarship, full ride, Morehouse. I was unfortunately not able to attend the health science, the pre-summer program that everyone that we know of actually attended,
right,
that we still are friends with. But I was able to come to Morehouse as a result of those individuals that, I always look at it, well, again, raised by my aunt and uncle. My parents were not my main ones who were in my life, but the Lord has always allowed there to be, along my journey, an individual, especially a male role model, to stand in that gap. At the house, again, it was my uncle. When I grew up, when I got to Morehouse, it was Tom Blocker and several other individuals who were those role models, and it allowed us to have that window to say, you can do something, you can be more. And I think that I always look at it where, Morehouse is a crucible, and those that are put into that, you either, from a heating element standpoint, allowed to get molded into something much, much bigger and stronger, or obviously you melt away some of the little pieces that fall to the side. But at the end of the day, that allowed us to have a sense of what this journey might entail. And so getting into the house, being able to understand and know that we had other individuals, all of us along this line, trying to say healthcare, medicine, what do we do, how do we do it? It allowed us to say, this is doable, it's plausible, we were encouraging one another, and as a result, 20-some years later, here we stay.
Right. And I think at the time we talk about Thomas J. Blocker, that name keeps coming up. He was very organized in getting us to where we needed to go. There was a pre-health careers, there was a pre-dental society as well. And so you had so many people in line to go to these various institutions. So Dr. Thomas J. Blocker deserves very high praise for how he had us all prepared. And the thing about it, being with a person like Vince and other people, you felt very comfortable. You knew that you were headed in a direction. You didn't have that self-doubt of, I can't make it. We all knew we were going places.
Right.
So when you left Morehouse with your degree in biology, you headed to dental school, and it wasn't Temple. Where did you end up going?
When we left at Morehouse, it was up at Fairleigh Dickinson University up in North Jersey. There was again, the connectivity that Morehouse provides. A gentleman who was a Morehouse alum, who's an oral surgeon, Dr. Francis Davis, who was established in the North Jersey area and had a relationship with the university.
Our generation was the post-civil rights generation. Everyone knows about Martin Luther King and Andrew Young and the picketing and the John Lewis's of the world, how they protested. So they protested for us, basically. So they opened those doors for us. But at a lot of these institutions, nobody of our color had been in those institutions. So yes, we'll let you in, and let's see how you do when you get there. And as Vince said, some people were very favorable, and some people did their best not to show you any favors at all and to let you know, hey, you don't belong here. So I think you still have to have a certain toughness to make it. You have to have a will within your own. I think probably the listening to you and Delbert being together was
that was crucial because there were a lot of instances and times where, you know, we just look at one, we had pledged together here more. We've known each other since 18. We pledged together. We were at dental school together. He's from Detroit. He's a tough kid. You know, Pittsburgh's gonna have to, you know, not as tough as Detroit, but we're not from the other side of the tracks where we couldn't, you know, hold our own. But being that we were there as a bond in the unit, it helped in those moments that were the darkest, and also we could celebrate together when we needed to celebrate. It was important that I think that now, if we fast forward in that same mindset, that you know the university itself, Temple and the School of Dentistry, and all have come a long way. Things have really advanced in terms of just recently, a young lady who was a year behind us. It just so happened all of these folks who were there with us at Temple were behind or in front of us. One of which now is in the Hall of Fame. That's on the wall. That there aren't too many of them. She's a practicing orthodontist in Philadelphia. That and I think she also was put on the board of trustees. So it's like there was never a thought or an inclination that that would happen. Not at Temple. We're not.
Yeah. So doors were busted down, and people went on to not only get through places, but they flourish at those places. And they've set the mindset now that you are capable of doing things. So we were the people who had to go through those doors, but now doors are open and access is there for people to do well and be not only accepted, but to excel. So the question I have for you now, Vince, is living in Philadelphia as a dental student, how did that help your career? Because you still live in the area. Wilmington, me being from the South, I wasn't as familiar with Delaware being so close to Philadelphia.
Okay.
So
it's a suburb of the Philly area, and so you get in and out pretty quickly. But the time in Philadelphia, being through the Temple window and then going and actually practicing in Delaware, it led itself that there were individuals that were there that were also HBCUers that you know, were able to reach out to young professionals that were there. When we were at dental school, there were 2 or 3 individuals particularly that made sure they went back to the institution and said, how can we help the black dental students? How can we make sure that they know how this nuance is? Can we get them a job? Can we do certain things? So when we came out, there was already a small but tight network that allowed us to have that entree into the professional ranks and not feel isolated, but not feel like as though we were, you know, on an island to ourselves. So it was important to do that. In Delaware, the transition there, you know, came as a result of my time in Philadelphia, between that Penn and also working with a gentleman that had a connection with somebody in Delaware. That connection was a gentleman who had a practice he was ready to step away from. But in order to practice in Delaware, unlike in Philly or New Jersey, that tri-state, Delaware had a separate board. So we had to step back after 8 years of being out and practicing and actually take another board in order to go and have a license to practice and purchase this gentleman's office. So that was in this, you know, anytime we sit for board, you know the routine, you've been there plenty of times, just like another one.
right.
So that, but it was well worth it.
Yes. So the Philadelphia thing, I think what I want to emphasize to those people looking to go into medicine or dentistry is wherever you practice, you should look for the schools to be in that area. If you're going to go to Temple, look to work in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia area. You'll just have so many more avenues and resources and connects that you wouldn't have if you were in California moving to Pennsylvania. So those are the things that when you're up and you're coming, just like me, I did my residency in DC. I had plenty of connections. I worked there for a while, and then I came to Atlanta. And fortunately for me, I had a couple of people here who were able to help me out, but the network was not there like it would have been in DC. I quite a few well established there. But I think that's a good thing. And Vince, so you moved to Delaware.
Yeah.
And then how did you go about forming your own business?
One of the things we'll talk on just briefly is that the transition of coming from Pennsylvania, where we had at least 100 or more black dentists in the vicinity, there was less than 8 in the whole state of Delaware. So the window and the management of actually connectivity was not there like it had been in Philly. The practice that I purchased and bought into in his business was one that had been told he was the second or third practicing dentist in the state at the time. And so he had, the community is much more community oriented, where, there were so few that those who were there would understand and know you're going to go hang out with this dentist, or that's one on the other side was Dr. Knox, or Dr. Woody Wilson. Those were the two main guys that were in the Wilmington community, and as a result, of Dr. Swan Smith. But it was a situation where the business itself was a different transaction. When I took over, old school cards, catalog, and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to being as computerized and updated as we know we needed to be. And having had the background and the experience of working with my wife, who was a tremendous business mind, that's what really made the difference. Because without a shadow of a doubt, when we go to dental school and medical school, we're trained in the science of that which we are to perform. The business end, and as a result, even that we were at Temple, it was an MBA level course that we were given, and it was kind of backdoored, soft shoe. The material's there, but you knew you had requirements to make, you had deadlines to meet, and that business piece just wasn't that high on the priority list. Right. But in hindsight, that should have been something first year, first semester that we should have been offered to begin that mentality of, yes, you're doing, the arts and science of healthcare, but you're also running a business. Right. And if you can't do that, no matter how much you make, what do you take home? And I think that for so many people that I've talked with, especially some of the older gentlemen, they really regret not having had that business acumen.
Right, and that's across the board. We didn't get a business education at Howard in the medical school, and a lot of other places did not offer that too. So it's almost off the seat of your pants learning. And fortunately, I was able to transition here with some people who allowed me to be in leadership positions, chairman of the department, president of the society, or of the anesthesia group that I was part of. But a lot of those things, those are some things that are missing in the training of healthcare professionals. And especially now, some young people are very into being entrepreneurs. And Vince, tell us about your practice, Blue Diamond Dental, and tell us about what you offer. It sounds like, looked at your website, that you're not just doing dentistry there, you're doing some other things too, aesthetics maybe.
We branch into the cosmetic range, aesthetic wise. Dentistry as a whole is obviously the science of the mouth and making sure it's the entry point to the body. And as a result, whatever we're intaking has to come through this origin of that range. And so you're trying to manage to make sure that the individuals are a little bit better understanding. So education helps play a large role of what we try to do in our communication with our patients, the new ones that we have come in and those who are existing, of kind of managing to make sure that they're doing what they can on the foundational level, so that as we build that out, because now we live in a much bigger range of folks who want to have the aesthetic, the cosmetic appearance, the smiling, the whitening, as far as their teeth are concerned, veneers, implants, things of that nature. What are the services that we kind of try to enhance and make sure that that's available? It is an art, as far as what we're doing, and it lends itself that, the smile is a lot of times receptive to people, and also on the flip side, it could be a source of self-esteem and self-worth, and lessening that for some individuals. And so how do we bridge that for those who may have the means and those who don't have means in order to get there? So we try to make that as low as was mentioning earlier off camera, but we were talking about the dentistry that we do at Blue Diamond it's also ministry. There's a ministry that everybody who sits in our seats who actually have a soul and a purpose in that regard. So we try to at least be in a mode of where can we best meet you. People have had bad experiences in the past when they've gone to the dentist. Right. Sometimes they become fearful, or how can we move this ball forward that you can have a better understanding of what this health aspect allows you to have because of the direct relationships from cardiac issues or from hypertension to diabetes that also play out if you can't eat your food correctly at a point by which the bolus of the food is not so large that it's taxing on the digestive system, you're not getting the nutrients, you have other issues. So there's a very large interplay from a medical dental standpoint that I think sometimes is missed. And so while we obviously want to handle the cosmetic, that's the cherry on the top, that's the icing on the cake. The main function of us being able to have something where someone is able to say, look, I'm not only eating better, sir, I'm able to not only do that, but my pressure's down, or other, I mean, these are the things that we want to encourage. We certainly try to do while we're actually in the presence of the patients, but also allow them to, go to whatever level that they think that they can manage from an aesthetic style.
Yeah, I think the two things that we share from me being an anesthesiologist and you being a dentist is that the fear of the patient. Sometimes I go in there and they say, oh, Dr. Howard, I'm more afraid of the anesthesia than I am the surgery. And I know that people have a fear of dentistry as well. So you do your best to try to allay those fears and just calm them the best you can, and then be open to answering questions, no matter what the questions may be. But you want to calm your patients. Now, at the end of the day, I have the elements to make sure my patients are very sedated, because I give them medication. At the end of the day, they're out. So that's a battle that's not as probably as extreme as yours, because you don't have those things. You have to rely on your capability as a interventional person who's almost a psychologist with some of the people that you work with.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the routine. We will do the local anesthetic piece, which obviously gets them at a point where they can function, but they're not totally out like you're able to handle it. So,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, between the nitrous sedation, oral sedation, but not necessarily the actual IV, not my setting, but allows them to at least have the work done, and then when on the other side, feel good that they've actually had it, and hopefully make that step a little closer to being a little bit less anxious, a little bit less afraid, because a lot of times what ends up occurring is the instances that take place when our kids were young at 3 or 4 or 5, when they go to the dentist, it carries throughout their young adult into adulthood.
Yes.
And that developed fear tends to be what is the most larger driving factor. And then they have children and they put that fear into them, and then it's like generational. And as a result, we try to make that window early when we have our patients that are young understand and know that this could be a fun place. And it could be by introducing it at a level where they're, not every time they come in like the pediatrician, I'm getting a shot, what's in that bag over there? Oh no, they're gonna give me, oh, I thought you loved me. Those kind of concepts, it allows us to bring them along with the smaller, like heightened kind of situation for them to appreciate the dentist, and hopefully it carries them a little bit longer when they're older.
You all do some things such as pampering your patients, anything like massages or anything like that?
That's one aspect of the practice that we've had. We have not been as active, obviously, now with COVID, because we've kind of dropped that portion a little bit more. But aromatherapy, having that is what the scent would otherwise be, that kind of lessens it if they're not having any issues with essential oils. Mask, if they don't want to see anything, making sure that hand paraffin waxes on their hands while they're there, things that will at least allow them. So they give us a notice. What might you like to see done before you arrive? We'd have that scheduled, and then have that as part of their dental experience.
Okay. And a couple of more questions before we wrap this up. We can go on and on. Vince, you were the president of the Dental State Society of Delaware.
Correct.
And how did you come about being that, and what did you gain by your 2 years as president?
It was a fortunate opportunity that took place where we ended up being, as part of the journey in the Delaware State Dental Society, you serve at different levels of capacity before you get into leadership. And when you get to leadership, there's another track that allows you to serve as a secretary for a period, kind of learning the nuances of the Treasury and all that, so that by the time you become the president, you've kind of experienced each and touched those bases that allows you to say, okay, I think I know what the right hand's doing over here, what the left hand's doing, and what one's not doing. So that was a process of about 6-7 years of actually being in that roles of leadership there, and then taking the helm of the president, where I was blessed to be the first African American in the 156-year history of the institution that actually sat in that chair. And it was on the back end of the COVID experience as well, because I was coming into it just as we were passing the baton of being shut down, and we were going through that. So a lot of what we were otherwise incorporating was geared as much to practicing dentistry as it was how do we actually stay open? How do we actually manage our staffs? How do we actually, do what we have to do with all these rules, regulations, and changes and that we were actually incurring? So that was, overwhelming in some regards, but rewarding in that the dental population, as far as practitioners, stood up and stepped up in major ways in our area, donating their supplies to the hospitals, making sure that there were needs that were being met, both emergent and emergency care that needed to be addressed. They were right there on spot, and nobody stepped away and said, "No, I'm not going to do that." So kudos to the dental community from the Delaware area that they did what needed to be done. And it's one of the things that while they have the extra exam, they call it the gold standard.
Okay, well, very good. The other thing too, as far as a career in dentistry, we talk to a lot of these young people out here going into dentistry now. Your vision of where you see where's dentistry headed. I know you're one of the dying breeds that has your own practice. A lot of times people have become part of bigger groups, and that's where medicine is headed too. Tell us a little bit about what you see there, and if you were coming back through this, how would your views look?
Well, as in medicine, dentistry is changing. It's much more along the lines of group practicing, more along the lines of corporate dentistry, and less of the individual mom and pop shops. While you have autonomy and you're allowed to be able to do your own thing and do your own boss in the mom and pop shop situation, the cost is somewhat of a deterrent. Right now, youngsters are coming out of dental school with between $350,000 and $600,000 in debt after they finish the programs, and it's very challenging to ask an African American in particular of color that's like, yo, you can just set aside $500,000, and that's before you even want to decide to open up a shop for another mill. And just like, well, I'm the first one on my journey. I don't have, Uncle Warbucks or somebody that's going to hook me up to be able to do this. That level of debt, that level of stress gets much more to an individual doing that. So it's more conducive a lot right now to the youngsters being youngsters, I guess they are because I'm bred, but the next generation to consider what they want to do and how they want to do it. And for dentistry, when we came through, we had that freedom. We had the autonomy to be your own boss, to do what you want to do. Now the dollar is dictating in a much bigger way what is really the journey. So I would say, for instance, without calling any individual name of corporations, but the corporate dentistry piece is something that people have really considered. I'm not a big fan, but it's a doable situation for circumstances. But that would be, I think, the way that the young next generation are going to have to consider what they want to do and how they want to do it.
Okay. And just tell us a little bit, outside of dentistry, how do you occupy your time? I know you mentioned your wife, and I know you are a girl dad.
I'm a girl dad.
Yeah. So how do you mixed all of that into your life and thriving outside of your profession, as well as I think you were Man of the Year. I saw that. Not Man of the Year, but you were the Daddy of the Year or something like that. Father of the Year.
Something like that. I'm just trying to. Thank you, though. But one of the things that I've got to give the big shout out to is my wife, Melanie. She and I will celebrate 30 years of marriage in July, and we've got two wonderful young ladies that are daughters. It's Alexandria and Ariana. Alexandria is a current fourth-year medical student up in Maryland, and Ariana is finishing a master's program in Europe and also still plays competitively soccer, or as they like to call it in Europe, football. And will return to us at some point to hopefully start her med school career as well. Don't have a dentist following in my pursuits, but we're still working.
It's not too late.
It's not too late. Well, I'll adopt somebody's kid.
It's getting there.
I'll adopt somebody's kid.
I understand.
But we'd like to travel and had opportunity, even just recently, over the holidays, to join our youngest in Lisbon, Portugal, and then over to Casablanca and spend the holidays, all four of us together for the first time in a little while. But travel is certainly one of the things that we love to do, and still athletically inclined and trying to working out and doing some things outside, and photography has continued to be, you know, one of my heart. If I ever get up and hang up my demo drill, it'd be time to pick up a camera and start going here.
Very good. Well, Dr. Vincent J Daniels, it's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure, man.
Yes,
I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. We've been trying to get you for a little while here. We took a hiatus from the show, but this is one of the gentlemen I definitely thought of when I first thought about doing these podcasts, because Dr. Daniels offers a lot, as you can tell through his background and his journey, and he's still climbing those ropes. We're in the same class at Morehouse, but I always admired him. I always knew he was a leader. That's why I asked. I didn't know he was a quarterback, but I knew he was somewhere doing something in a leadership position. So on that note, we're going to close. We're going to see you later. And again, we're in studio. Maybe we'll get a couple of more people in studio. First guest in studio. And for
I feel honored.
You feel honored? We're going to give you our AYSA infusion pen.
I really feel honored.
There you go.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Love you, man.
Love you.
Appreciate you. Yes, sir.